Welcome to the channel. This is Scaling for Success, and I am really excited today to talk to Kristie Clayton. Kristie, I have gotten to know just a little bit late last year, and she is just doing amazing things. And we are looking at the wonderful conversation about COOs and integrators. Kristie, why don't you give the audience, before we dive into these questions and the topics of today, a little bit about you, a little information.
Yeah, so I started my career as an integrator. And for those of you who are running on EOS and know what that terminology means, but for those who may not, it is basically a chief operating officer role. We just run on a very specific operating system. And through that evolution, I realized that I was very passionate about developing leaders, and most specifically women leaders. And so I formed an organization called HerVerse. Her stands for Helping Executives Rise. And we have three offerings that includes community and coaching for executive leaders who are at the second in command role, and for the women who report to that second in command role, so the senior leadership team. And then I do coaching as well, for both of those groups. So it's a very exciting time and place, Susan, that's for sure.
It really is. And it's so important to continue to develop your skills and to not feel like you are there by yourself in the role. And I know I've talked to a lot of COOs, a lot of solopreneurs, so I run a fractional COO operating business. And as they come in, they're like, it's so nice to have the community, to have the connection, to have the place where if I've got a challenge, something, and I want to talk to somebody about it, there's a place where I can actually go and say, hey, I have this issue. Do you mind if we chat about it? Because if you're out there by yourself trying to solve it, you're probably going, searching YouTube channels or you're looking at books, but that's not as dynamic as a conversation, right?
Exactly, exactly. Well, and what we have found is that when you bring the parties together, first of all, this is an extremely lonely role, right? Because oftentimes we are, assigned tasks or, vision from our CEO visionary. And so we are responsible for carrying that out. So we oftentimes don't want to go back to this person and say, hey, tell me how to do this, because they're relying on us to do it, right? But then it's also sometimes inappropriate or just not the right time to go to our leadership team about it as well. So, because we're that beautiful, happy in between, we don't always have people that we can go to. So, having a community of your peers now gives you that opportunity to have a go to people that you can talk to and really work things out. The other thing I've seen, Susan, is I don't know about you, but when I talk through it with my peers, like actually like brainstorming and talking it out, I oftentimes can expedite my learning curve. And whereas, trial and error over maybe 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years is really decreased to, maybe just a couple of months. And it really helps me, propel my company forward much faster.
And too true, too true. Now, before we get going, we may have a guest appearance today. Because Kristie has got a beautiful pup, and this pup is at her feet, and as you can see, it was just a little bit of a jiggle there, but this is a beautiful dog, so may have a guest appearance. I love it. But you're so right. And so one of the things, Kristie, that you and I really connected on is having the COO role experience. And then because we both run our own organizations, now we're CEO, sometimes that perspective shift of looking at it from the other direction, like, oh, now I have a deeper understanding of why this or that happened. Do you find that when you have those conversations now, you bring a slightly different perspective?
I do, because so what I found, Susan, is that am I a really great integrator or second in command leader? Absolutely. I love doing it. I spent a lot of time really honing that skill, for 13 years of my life. And then what I learned is I'm actually very naturally gifted at being a visionary. And other people saw it in me well before I saw it in myself. So am I great at being a COO or an integrator? Absolutely. But where do I gain the most energy and love? Like, where is my pouring out my heart and soul occurring? It's in the visionary role. But now that I've sat in both seats, it's really easy for me to think through wow, how is that going to be perceived? Am I communicating correctly? You know, am I taking, oh, she made an appearance. Hello, Jasmine. Can you get down, baby? Thank you. So sorry. But no, you know, where do I gain that energy? And that energy is really exciting for me to be in that visionary seat, because I can tell you, I've also seen the flip side happen where some people started off as the visionary, and they realized, wow, like I actually really love this integrator or this COO role much better because it comes more naturally to me. And so they be a CEO? Absolutely. But their energy and their excitement came from being the COO role.
And it's really important to know that finding your sweet spot, even though you can do the different roles, you may
Yes.
not like or enjoy. And this is doesn't matter what role in the organization that you're fulfilling, this is true for you. You know, I like the
Absolutely.
example of my parents because they're very different people. They can do a bunch of different roles, but
Mhm.
my mom is a great widget maker. She
Mm,
loves to serve people. She loves to do the same thing. She loves repetitive tasks. My father, not so much. That would just be the kill of death. He can do it, but that is not where his sweet spot sits. And so
right.
knowing where your passion comes from and being able to find that role and fill that passion just makes you so much better at the job.
Yeah. Well, and it does, and it gives you that perspective too, as well, right? So, like I said, for me personally, hey, please get down. For me personally, because I sat so long in the integrator role, I understand it, right? So I know that when I'm communicating something to my integrator, how to communicate exactly what it is that I'm hoping for us to achieve, making sure it's crystal clear, making sure that timelines are understood, like so that we can really make sure that we are working like side by side as a partnership, and not, you know, trying to work against each other, but let's actually work together and row in the same boat together in the same direction.
Then there's so much to unpack with what you just said because you know I have a COO as well, and that ability to be as a partnership piece and
Yes.
find out how to communicate and how to deal with the chinks when they happen, those roadblocks. You're like, okay, well, we just ran into this problem. What caused it? How can we solve it? How do we do better next time? And how do we sit then back in the partnership in order to make sure that the business needs, the team gets everything that they need, because when it's all harmonious and working beautifully, that feels really good. You can understand that.
Yeah. Well, and you know, depending on what accountability or organizational chart you look at, a lot of times the visionary CEO role is at the top, and then the COO or the integrator role sits right underneath it. And what I really say is they actually should be side by side. This is a partnership of these two people really coming together. And Susan, the interesting aspect of this is if you have the right duo, they should be very drastically different people, right? Like visionaries are future thinking and they're, you know, big ideas and big relationships, and like that is their jam. That is what they love. And it usually they love also being like the external person, the face of the organization. So they love all of that. On the other side, this is usually a more quiet person who loves to be behind the scenes as a COO. And so when you have these like drastically different personalities, sometimes there can be, you know, challenges. And listen, all of us have our challenges in all of our relationships. But the beauty of this particular relationship is that when it does come together and work together, it is magic. It is absolute magic. These two can really, really, truly take a company to the next level. It's just knowing and understanding how to communicate with each other.
That fit element. I know when I go through sales calls, I'm looking for specific things when I'm asking questions. It's not usually that I'm asking questions, you know, what color is the road? And so
Yes.
I'm looking for a simple, I'm going deeper down with, okay, I know you're saying this, but I can tell that there's a little more here and I need to dig here, because the partnership has to have the right characteristics on the soft side. It's not about a job description that says, can you do the P&L? Can you do the project management? Can you do the, you know, that's great. And
Mhm.
99 out of 100 people can do that when they apply. But the softer skills are really important. We had a conversation recently about not saying no first. And I laughed at this one because my first reaction, because I know I've lived as a COO for so very, very long, and as a parent, no. Well, now let me think about that. But the ability to talk about visionary throwing out an idea and the COO having to not say no first, but take that breath.
Mhm.
It's a fun dynamic.
It is, but it's also transformational. And let me tell you why, because now that I'm sitting as the this is one of the big things that I learned moving from integrator to visionary, and now understanding the feelings that happen with the visionary when you say no first. And so, you know, I caught myself, wow, looking back over my past, I said no first a lot. So how can I really get this message out that when you always say no first to the visionary, at least speaking for a majority of them that I know, they slowly start to stop telling you the big ideas, right? You know, that's why we tell kids no, right? Is because we want them to stop doing something. And so if you're always saying no and you're saying it first, it really does change the dynamic of now as a visionary. I don't want to tell you the big things because I know you're going to say no. So why am I going to tell you anyway? And so eventually I start telling you less and less and less and less until I just stop telling you all the things that I want to do with my organization. Now, and that's not a good place to be either, right? Because as the COO sitting in that seat, I'm like, I need all those big visions. I need all of those things coming to me so that I can really decipher through the good ones and the bad ones and what we're going to do as an organization. So what I really coach my clients on is what can you say no to in a different way? Because sometimes we do have to say no, right? I mean, it is important that, you know, we can't do all of the things all of the time. That's why usually COOs are in their place, is to really filter through those things and then make sure the things that we are initiating are initiated in the appropriate time. So I love to, it's something I call the sandbox, right? I love to tell my visionary, hey, we're just going to play in the sandbox right now and just like, tell me all the vision, tell me all the things that you're thinking, and let's build a sand castle together. And then as we're brainstorming and talking through things, hey, this one little column over here, it doesn't make sense. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that column. And do we need to just not rebuild it? Do we just leave that column off? Do we need to rebuild it in a different way? And so you're really just taking the time of like thinking through all of the things that are said. And what I love to do is I love to just write down all of the ideas, the things that the visionary is saying to me so that I capture all of the vision. And I love questions like, can you tell me more about that? Can you help me understand what this would look like? When do you expect that we would be able to do this? And one of my favorite, absolute favorite questions to ask a visionary, it actually comes from Nicole Minicky. She's an incredible integrator. And she always asks the question, on a scale of 1 to care, where are you? And what I love about this is she also says no sevens, because 7 is really that medium number, right? Where everybody's like 7, because it can go either way. So I need you to be on one side of the scale or the other, right? And so a lot of like what I found out when I was talking to my visionaries, or even when I was being asked that question, a lot of times visionaries can come across very passionate about everything, right? We're like, oh my gosh, I've got this great idea and I've got to share it with you. And then the integrator or the COO is like, oh my gosh, like now we've got to figure out how to do this. But if you ask me that simple question on a scale of 1 to care, where are you? Oh, I'm like a 4. But because I come across so excited, you think I'm a 10, right? So asking that one question can sometimes be a really big differentiator too. Oh, you're like a 4, then I know I can put this on the back burner. Oh, you're like a 10 on this one. That means I really need to take this one into consideration. And I can start diving deep into other questions about, you know, what are timeline expectations? You know, what are resources that we have to be able to do this, and start diving into the how of how we're going to do this. But until I know how passionate you are about this, I don't even know where to start.
And all of those great questions go down to something that's really important. And we've talked about it with our own team as well, creating the culture of curiosity.
Yes.
because we say things, everybody says things using the same words, but what the word means to me or the word means to you, or what the perception is of the emotion behind it, may or may not suit the reality of what somebody is trying to convey.
Exactly.
Asking the deeper questions, that's so important to do. So I know I had one of my experiences as a COO is I was working with a COO, and I was working with a visionary who literally thought they could run continuously. And so every 48 hours, they shifted. And eventually, after saying no, because every time they shift and you're trying to do the 90-day rocks, you every time you do this, you're shifting the ship away from all of the goals and objectives. But I had to say no. And eventually it just went around me, right? Those end runs started to happen. And you're like, well, you can't, like, I'm an ineffectual operator if I don't have the information and the communication.
Yeah.
And so how do you keep that line open, that culture of curiosity, that understanding that you've got to know behind the scenes what's actually going on and what's important?
Exactly. And that's why sometimes asking some of the curious questions of like, what is your timeline expectation for this? Oh, you're not expecting this. Like you, and a lot of times, like I just found if I communicated, hey, don't forget our current 90-day goals are these. Ugh, how are we going to shove this one in there? They're like, a lot of times they're like, of course, like I didn't expect you to do it this 90 days. And sometimes we are, right, as visionaries, we're like, hey, wait a minute, like this opportunity is a once in a lifetime and we have to get it done right now. But then there's other curious questions that you can start to ask too, right? Okay, so if this is going to become our priority for the next 90 days, what on our priority list is no longer a priority?
Correct.
Engaging that information from that person so that they can see, oh wait, if we do jump into this, we can't jump into all these other things as well. Because listen, our teams only have so much capacity, and as the COO, we know that, we understand that, but sometimes we just need to remind our visionary of that, because visionaries want everything yesterday, right?
You may be speaking my language, Kristie. I may have done that once or twice to my own COO, who then
Same,
laughs at
friend.
me. We have that type of relationship. We're like, okay, now let's bring this down. What? Pick from the 10.
Exactly. And listen, I've done it to my COO too, and she's just been like, friend, this is a lot. What are we going to do here? So just getting curious and asking those questions, though, is really, really important. And it helps you stay aligned, right? Because to me, that's the most important thing as a COO and as a CEO visionary. You just have to stay aligned with each other and making sure you're really truly running on that same path, rowing in that same boat in that same direction. Because what happens at this level with these two people is what really truly does filter out throughout the entire organization. And if this relationship is not aligned, nothing else in the organization is going to be nearly as aligned as it could be.
Absolutely. So how do we inspire our visionaries? How do we actually give them the inspiration to do and be the best that they can be?
Yeah, I think there's several things that we can do. As COO, I really like there's two major things that come to mind for me. Is number one is first to remind them of their strengths on occasion. Like, hey, you are the person in the organization that really sees the future, understands the future, sees where we're going. And so we need to create that space for you to be able to go off and really truly think about all of the things that need to be done. And just listen, you never want to slide yourself into an executive assistant where you're now scheduling the time and doing all the things for them. But you want to create that conversation with them that, hey, we're really looking for you. And you are the one person in our organization that does this and does this really, really well. And then the other thing I would say is also protecting them at the same time. I mean, a lot of times, whether it's their calendars that are full or their mental space is just not right there, helping them clear those things out, so that they can really truly focus on what the future needs to look like. That's why, to me, one-on-one or same page meetings are one of the most critical and important of the entire week, and we do ours weekly. I know others, have a different cadence, but for me, we do those weekly, and it is really, really important that we hold those sacred. And both of us come, we both talk about things. We are very personable during our conversations as well, so that we really truly know each other. And she can just sense from me, Kristie, it's not like I'm feeling something from you today. She may not know what it is, but giving me that space to be able to talk about it, it was really, really helpful too. That, you know what, I am not having a good day. I'm not feeling well, or I've got a bad headache, or, something happened in my family, or whatever the circumstances may be. But sometimes just having that person that is just asking you how you're doing and if you're okay can really make the difference. And knowing them well enough, is really critical in being able to do that.
It completely is. Let's just talk on same page meetings, because I know I am as big an advocate as well. You have to be able to spend the time to do the same page meetings every week. Again, I'm an every week person, because if you're not, then you slowly start to drift,
Yeah.
and you don't even realize that maybe you're drifting a little bit, and you really need to come back into that partnership one more time. So I had a CEO experience where they didn't want to meet weekly, they didn't want to even touch base daily, and it was 30 minutes. And for my COO and I, we budget 90 minutes. We always take 2 hours, because part of that is that we're having fun in the first part of the conversation. Well, what did you do on the weekend? How are you doing? What's this? What, the things that have gone on, whether they be business or personal. We just want some catch up time before we actually hit the agenda.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. And that personal check-in is really, really important. And, I love that EOS has a cadence for us where, or I'm sorry, an agenda for us, where during our L10 cadence, we are able to really sit down and do that check-in as well. But a same page meeting is completely different, where that check-in needs to be like meaty, right? So it's not just, hey, good personal, good professional. It's, hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your world right now? And we really do, we share a lot of things with each other. Just making sure that we know how each other are actually doing as a human being, not just how the business is doing. And it does make a big difference, a huge difference.
I like to ask, what are you passionate about right now? Right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that shifts and changes depending on the experiences that we have personally. So just a little story for me. A year ago, I wasn't as focused on talking about businesses getting exit ready. But I have now been encountering every single week a business owner or a business shutting down, or, oh my God, this has happened. I got a random call from somebody saying there was a suicide, which actually turned out to be a murder. And you're like, oh my gosh, can you help solve for this piece? Or, hey, there's new legislation, like in Canada came out with new legislation for employee ownership transfers and stuff. And so being able to become more passionate about these. Hey, who did you meet on the weekend and talk to about this? Is a great same page question, because that's something we're becoming more passionate about.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. That's a great question to ask. And also, Susan, like as the other person on the other side, you can also see where this person is right now, right? So if they're dealing with a suicide or a murder or a sick family member, or if they themselves are not well, now you can understand where their mental space is, right? I know that for me, like when my grandmother passed, um, it was one of those things where I just had some mental blocks around it too, right? So if I was having a day that, was focused, on certain things, my brain not be working the same way that it had been prior to her death, right? So those type of check-ins where you can ask those deep questions of, what's going on in your world, or what are you passionate about, or all of, what is happening, they really give you insight into where that person is right now, so that you can meet them in that same space, right? Because I know if I found out a family member had passed away and I come with an excitement, like, I'm so, the other person may not be able to receive where I am in my excitement, but also I know to meet them where they are too. So you really are coming together in partnership. You can still have the same conversations. It just may be a little bit different approach to that particular conversation that you're wanting to have.
Yeah. And I find that some of that really folds into how do you have purpose together and making sure that you're in that alignment. What activities do you suggest for alignment check-ins aside
Yeah.
from the school stuff?
I really truly believe alignment check-ins, are critical. But I think that where it really starts, Susan, is a lot of trust that is built between the two, right? That I can actually be vulnerable and tell you like the real stuff that's happening. So there has to be a lot of trust that is happening. One of my favorite questions to ask when we're kind of in this alignment is, if I share something as a visionary and I'm like, oh my goodness, I have this incredible idea, we play in this visionary sandbox for a little while and really think through all of the things that can happen, is to ask those a few curious questions, of, hey, like, when are we going to be doing this? What does this look like? How does this happen? Those things are really, really great. But also sometimes just those quick questions too of, hey, where are we at with that? How are you feeling about, where the progress that we're making towards XYZ? Has anything come up for you since then? Just to make sure, like, I mean, there are times that we have really like thought about something. We put an entire plan together, like we knew exactly how we were going to execute a new product or service or a benefit, but then we get in the middle and we're like, uh, this isn't working. Like, oh, like something went awry here. But if we never get curious to ask those questions, now we do have misalignment. Because I know as CEO, sometimes we can be very focused on crossing the finish line, right? That's our role, is to make sure everything gets done. But as visionary, I'm like, something's not right here. Like it doesn't feel the same as when we started. So now I, as visionary, need to get curious and start asking questions too, like, hey, how are things going? Has anything not happened the way that we expected it to? Or, all of those things. Because sometimes it's just getting curious, and giving each other permission to get curious together.
Which is important in going both directions, right? Now, sometimes I find that it's really more the COO in their role who does more of the coaching of the CEO, because the visionary tends to be out there. They're very much in the future. They're very much, well, didn't that already happen?
Mhm. Exactly.
No, we're at like week 2 of 12, but thank you for thinking that it's already done. I appreciate
Yes.
that. We're a great team, but we're, not like that. And that ability to bring them back to check in on the team. Very few CEOs that I talk to don't say, and I really want to make sure the team is taken care of. And I love that, because even though entrepreneurs sometimes get a bad black eye in the news, um, every one of them are there to build a business, add value, and provide jobs and all of the economic benefits that happen. Their intent isn't bad. It's sometimes that understanding of how to deliver, and that's where the COO comes in, at being that expert. And curiosity, great questions, thoughtful questions. It's
Yeah.
really important.
I agree. But one other aspect too, though, Susan, is to know and understand each other's strengths and weaknesses too, right?
Mhm.
Because if you do have a COO who is driving things forward and to that completion is the most important thing for them, and you have a visionary who's more people focused, that can be the person who's really checking in on, hey, how's the pulse of the team right now? Like, I walked into a room and it seemed like everybody was really stressed out. So what's going on? So allowing both parties to really show up as their best selves, which means you need to know it and understand each other. I personally, there's a couple of assessments that I love to take with my visionaries or with my integrator, and really just know and understand, like, where is your strength? What are you really, really, really great at? What are you passionate about? And then where am I really great, and how do we fit in together? And really, like, again, going back to trust, being able to sit down with each other and saying, hey friend, I see you're really stressed out about this. How can I support you? How can I help in this? And that other person knowing that they're coming from a place of love, and they're coming from a place of really truly wanting to help, not calling you out for not getting your job done, right? So, and because that's how both parties can take it. I'm here to help. Well, you're calling me out and telling me that I'm not doing my job. And so you got to make sure you come from a place of trust, that you both know you have each other and you have each other's backs, but also you have like the love and respect for each other that, hey, this is a mutual partnership. How can we do this together? You are not alone. I am not alone. We are together in this.
I love that. And I want to go back to something that you had just said, because it bears digging a little deeper into it. And so I was going to ask you if you have assessments that you like to use. I am a big fan of that. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the journey that my CEO, COO, and I, we're on together, because that ability to build, I mean, it goes back to the very beginning of what we talked about. The ability to build the rapport and the relationship to move forward together is so important. So let's start maybe with, what are your preferred assessments? Because there's so many out there that are great.
Oh, there are countless assessments out there, and they all have their strengths. The three that I love the Kolbe Index. And what I love about Kolbe is it really tells you somebody's cognitive behaviors, right? So how are they naturally going to do something? Because how we think and how we feel is very different than how we do. So I know, my strength, my Kolbe is an 8-7-3-2, 8-7-4-3. I know my numbers, but I don't know why I just hesitated there. 8-7-4-2. And so I know myself well enough to know that, hey, I'm a high fact finder. So I need all of the information. And honestly, if you're bringing something to me, you're going to you need to give me all of the information, but then you also need to know that I need time to probably go sit and like do some own research on my own. But that's one of my strengths, right? Is I need to know all the information. So I'm going to know the nitty-gritty details. So I'm looking for someone who can counterbalance me on that, and that we both don't need all of the information, because otherwise we're just going to have, analysis paralysis, and we're never going to move forward. So it's really great to have that person who's on the opposite spectrum of you when it comes to that. The other one I love is Working Genius. Working Genius is Patrick Lencioni's new assessment that just came out in the last couple of years. And what I have found is, wow, wow, wow. Knowing what everybody's strengths are can be a game changer. And if you have all of the right components in the room, then you really do have people that can really make a difference. I'm a galvanizing inventor. And so, for me, I know I can really persuade people, and that I love to come up with new ideas. That's why I'm sitting in the visionary seat, right? I'm a very curious person, and I'm always looking for like, what can we do next and how can we do it? But that also means when I'm working with someone, I don't need another GI in the room. I need somebody who may have more discernment than I do, or, has tenacity to actually, get it across the finish line. And so that's really important to me on my side, is to make sure that I don't have, two people in the room that are the exact same person. Otherwise, we're never going to get anything done. The other subset that I really, really love is the predictive index. I just found it tells you a lot about a person's personality and how they really work and achieve things. And I just, it was an eye opener for me myself on how I worked. I don't think it'll be a surprise to you that I'm a captain, and so I love to lead that ship. And so, for me, it's really like, it's just knowing and understanding who you are. But again, this is the assessment where I can really see, what is the personality of the person on the other side, and how do we work together to make things happen? And I'll throw in one last one that I really appreciate. It's the language of appreciation. Sometimes we really like try to express appreciation or gratitude for someone, but we're speaking in our own language. And by the way, this is Visionary Integrator. This is Integrator Leadership Team, but also it can be spouses and children and everybody else. If I'm speaking in my language, which my particular language, I'm bilingual when it comes to language of appreciation. I'm words of affirmation, and I am gift giving. And so if I'm like giving you a gift, that is me saying thank you. Like, I appreciate you. I value you. But if the person on the other side, if that's not their language, then they're just like, yeah, what is this? Thanks, but they're not receiving it the way that I'm intending for it to be given, right? So if their language is acts of service and they just want to spend some quality time with you, quality time with you, hey, taking them out to lunch is a much like bigger showing of how much you appreciate them, because you're spending that time with them, and and just being connected to them more one-on-one. They're me giving them a gift is definitely not going to be received the same, as if they want to spend quality time with you.
I love that. And you know what's interesting to me, because I know there's so many great pieces out
Oh,
there to this. Your list and my list aren't even, we got one maybe that overlaps.
nice. What are
And I was
yours?
like, wow. So I've just recently been introduced to predictive index, but I was introduced a long time ago. And so I'm a culture index person, very similar in terms of the dots, and some of the pieces are not the same.
Yep.
But I love the culture index piece. I find it's really good. So I'm an architect. So I love the high level. I love to stay there. I like to be the visionary. I'm going to dive down deep if I need to. Don't worry, I will get the stuff done. But then I would, let me come back up, please, in order to organize all of the little bits and pieces. The other
Yes.
one I just really introduced to was SEMA, and I had never heard of that one. And that's about motivated abilities. Very interesting process. And so it was asking a whole bunch of questions for stories. I was like, really? You want me to tell you stories about what I did? Like, really? Okay. So I had to figure out what stories to share, which ones were share worthy, which ones were not. And it wasn't about the outcome of the story, it was about the journey. And so it was really interesting. Then you have an interview after you write all your documentation. You have an interview with somebody, and at the end they produce a report that talks to how how do your motivated abilities affect what you do. And so it has all sorts of lists of words. But for instance, my COO and I have similar motivated abilities in terms of the word. So we could say we're both learners or we're both teachers. But how that has shown up for us, how that motivated ability actually looks for her and I are very different. And so I love that PI, CI, they're great for understanding different components. They're great for, my mother on culture index is 98% of the world is less of a team player than she is.
Oh, wow.
Like, I was like, wow, like I've never seen anybody that far. That
Yeah.
explains so much.
Yeah.
that one dot explained a lot to me. Whereas I'm on the other spectrum. I'm running. Can you keep up? so
Exactly.
so how she and I wind up having those arguments about things. Very interesting. So predictive index, culture index, and I like strength finder as well.
Yeah.
Where can we make sure that people are sitting in the strongest seat possible so they can show up? And so the motivated abilities and the strength finder I find work really, really well in together. And then my COO and I actually did a disc for leaders. So it wasn't the traditional disc that I had done. And it was, again, very interesting. We're both COOs at heart. I stepped into the CEO role. There's overlap, but only by 75%. And then there's a total opposite with us. And I'm like, wow, isn't that interesting? But it was perfect. The way our motivated abilities showed up was the rest of the story of why that worked well for us. So you go into the thought process. And I know a lot of people look at visionaries and integrators and they've heard the story. Well, there's you have to have that fit, that match. And I think it's the puzzle piece that gets talked about a lot, which is great. But what does that actually mean? And that's where the assessments really come into play, making sure you've done that work. And so you said that you do this then with your COO, or have done with your COO, or you do it with your, on the other side, when you're COO, you've done it with your visionaries.
Yes. Yes. I
Nice.
think it's very important. It's knowing and understanding that other person on the other side, right? Like, one of the things I love about predictive index is it also, one of the forms that you can get, or one of the documents you can get, really, like, it helps you think about, if you're going in to have a conversation with somebody, what are some of the aspects you need to take into consideration, the difference between the two parties. How do you need to show up? How is that person going to show up? And, like, as a leader, that's incredibly important to me, right? I want to make sure that I'm communicating clearly. And so I'll pull out, I have this trusted little uh, binder that I keep here, like just three rings on it, that is, I have laminated all of my my people, like their predictive index, my predictive index, and this one particular document. And if I'm going in, especially if I'm going in to have a difficult conversation, I will pull this out and I will really truly sit and think about, oh wow, this says, Kristie, you're going to show up as a dominant person, and you're going to lead the most of the talk. The best thing to do is to get curious and ask questions and let that person, lead most of the conversation. And I'm like, okay, that's a great reminder to me, right? Like, I do tend to dominate conversations. And also because I'm sitting in the CEO or the COO role, if I'm talking to someone who reports to me, I need to understand the power of my words, right? They're going to take that as immediate, like, action items, and they need to go start working on things. But as visionary, I may be sitting in a, oh wow, I just had a thought moment, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so I just need to be crystal clear in what I'm communicating and how I'm communicating, and being very just hyper aware of the person on the other side and how they're receiving it. Because they may be receiving it in a way that I completely don't intend for it to be received. I meant for it to be just an idea. It was a thought that came in and out and it's gone. But now they're taking action on it. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, that wasn't intended to be that way. Or I say something and that person receives it in a way that is very negative for them. And so now I've taken them in a spiral that I never intended. So just being conscious and aware of the person that's sitting on the other side of the table and what they're receiving from you, how they're receiving it, is really, really important. And that's why I love some of these, because it really can dive deep into that, so that I can be thoughtful in my approach with them.
And I would love to add to that one, when we are recruiting. So as CEOs, when we're looking for our COOs and our match, going through that thought process, a lot of these different surveys, they also have in some of the pieces that go, and I know Culture Index does this. When I'm looking for the next person to fit in this role, aside from the technical skills, what are the soft skills? And I can give you an estimated profile. It's not perfect. Don't take it as gospel, but if you get 75 or 66% the way there, know where you need to flex. And how does that role then fit within those direct reports 360? What type of pieces do you need to look at there? So it was really, I love the use of these assessments for a variety of different reasons when you're building the team.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Because one thing too to think about is, regardless of which assessment you're looking at, most of them will suggest to you that you have somebody in all of the categories, right? Because if, like I said earlier, if working genius, if I have another, galvanizing inventor in the room, me and that person are just going to sit and invent things all day long. So we need to make sure that we have somebody who's in the room that's like, wait a minute, discernment, tenacity, like, are we actually going to do these things? And when are we going to do the things? And how are we going to do? So it's important to make sure you have all of the personalities in the room. Same thing with Colby, right? Like I said, I'm a high fact finder. I'm an 8 fact finder. And if all we have are high fact finders in the room, yep. And listen, I've had this happen to me. Most of my team were all high fact finders, 7 and above. And we didn't have very many people, or no one in the room sometimes, that was counterbalancing us to say, time out, friends. Do we have enough information to go ahead and make a decision and move forward? We were spiraling and just, we need more. Well, there's got to be another article that has more information. Or, you know what? I bet we could read another book about that. I bet there's a conference that's coming up that could give us more. Holy moly, friends. When do we have enough information? And so it's really true, like having that person that is a counterbalance to you and who you are is absolutely critical in moving forward. But also, Susan, one of the most important things to me about assessment is knowing and understanding yourself. That self-awareness of how you are showing up is really, really important. Sometimes as leaders, we don't intend for our words to come across the way that they do. So if we can just be cognizant and aware of how we show up and how that person on the other side of the table is receiving what we're saying, then we can go a long way. Emotional intelligence is really important.
It is. It is. I love that. And so we were doing this because I'm a fact finder too. So I totally get all of that. I'm an epidemiologist. You don't get much more data driven than some of that sort of roles from a background perspective. I get you. When you're sitting in your role as a COO or an integrator, how do you know where you are in that role, in the development, in the journey? How do you say, oh, I think I need to be better at this soft skill? How can you identify some of those?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, there is an assessment, no surprise.
Uh,
It's out there. Keystone, well, it was formerly Keystone, it is now Strategic Talent Partners, put together an integrator continuum several years ago. And one of the things that I love about this particular assessment is it does exactly what you just asked, Susan. I think the one misconception, one of many sometimes, but the one of the biggest misconceptions about the COO role is people say, well, I'm looking for an integrator, so find me an integrator. Okay, but what type of integrator are you looking for? What skills do they need to have? Oh, no, I want an integrator. And I mean, I can tell you, because of the organization that I founded, I have a lot of visionaries who will reach out to me and say, hey, I know you have a group of integrators that get together, and I'm looking for one. Can you help me find one? And when I ask them the question, great, can you send me a job description so we can make sure we find you the right person? I'm looking for an integrator. Is the answer.
no, it
I'm always
really
like,
has. Yeah.
and I'm always like, two things. Number one, self-awareness, dude. You are coming across as a jerk, so no, I'm not going to send my people to you. And second is, there are so many different types of integrators, and knowing and understanding as visionary who you're looking for, and number two, as integrator or COO, who you are is going to make a world of difference. So this continuum is fantastic. It ranges from, the left side to the right side, and there is no right or wrong, by the way. And there's also not you have to go from left to right. It's find your perfect spot. But on the left side of the continuum, they talk about the PPM integrator, people, process, and metric management. That is their jam. They love, love, love all of those components. And then on the other side is a strategic advisor. And that is the person who is really, truly looking for partnership with the visionary. They're looking for a well built out, leadership team that they're leading and guiding along the way. And I can tell you what I realized personally when I found out about this assessment, took it. I was I could not figure out why I was unhappy in a particular integrator role that I had taken. And what I learned after taking this assessment is I'm a fantastic at being in the strategic advisor role, and really being that partner with the vision, really truly like discerning and figuring out like what are all the things that need to happen. You tell me what you want to happen, and I'm going to tell you how to make it happen, right? That is the beauty of the visionary and the integrator sometimes. And that strategic partner, that's my jam. That's where I really, really thrive. However, I had taken a fractional integrator role, and I was sitting in the PPM side. And I
Was
was like,
that
whoa,
fit? Wow. Yeah.
yeah. So it's an integrator role, but it was a very, very different aspect. And although, can I do the PPM side? Yes. Will it drive me absolutely crazy? Yes, because it's not what I love to do. So I can do it for a short period of time. I just can't do it long term. Otherwise, I get bored, I get frustrated, I'm not happy in the role, and it doesn't work for me. So being very cognizant and aware, and listen, the assessment is out there, and you can take it, you can dive deep into the questions. And actually, like, we're going to be doing, this is such a huge focus for me now, that we're actually bringing in Tony and Mike from Strategic Talent Partners into our summit this year, and having them really like walk through a 2-hour workshop with our people, to really talk through, where are you on the continuum. The one thing that I've seen a mistake that is being made by integrators is they're like, well, I have to go from left to right. Like that's the destination, right? Is I have to be on the right side of the continuum. And I'm like, no, my friend, you don't. What is really important that you do is you identify where on the continuum you really thrive and enjoy being in that particular role, and then find that one, and then just continue increasing your skill sets to get better and better and better at that one, instead of trying to shove yourself into a, you know, a square peg into a round hole. And I'm gonna be this integrator on the other side of the continuum that I don't even want to be that one. I don't enjoy it. But also, if you are on the right side, or on the left side and want to be on the right, what are the skills that you can grow and develop so that you can make that migration over to the other side? So I'm super excited about this.
That sounds like an absolutely wonderful one. I had not heard about that one yet, but that's so important. And it goes back to, it's got to be the right fit. It's so critical to have that fit with the organization, the culture, and the CEO, the visionary, in order to have success in your role as a COO or an integrator. And if you don't have that, if there's no understanding, you're trying to apply for a role where somebody hasn't properly scoped it out, then it's, you know, kind of my job, my thing is, as a COO, I need to ask more questions during the interview process to understand, is this role more of a partnership? Is this role more of a PPM? Is this role something where there's a misfit and culture alignment? Yes, we talk about it, but I find that there's not a lot of questions being asked on the other side of the table
Exactly.
in order to make sure that some of these fit pieces are right. Just because you want the job, just because you want to be in the role and you think, oh, that's going to sound so cool, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the one that you will shine in and be amazing in the most.
I could not agree more with what you just said. So I actually work with a lot of integrators that are looking for their next integrator role. And here's a couple of things that I have learned is that most visionaries are galvanizing. Right? We love to get people super excited about what we're doing. And as integrator, we can get really excited about what they're doing, right? Because I mean, we want to help them carry that out. And oh my gosh, this vision for what they're doing sounds amazing. I want to be the one that's doing that with them, until you start asking more questions, right? You need to know and understand the person who's sitting on the other side of the table. They naturally get people super excited and really truly want people to see the vision, the same thing that they see. So if you're sitting on this side of the table and you're not asking the right questions about what type of role it is, or more about the organization, you can ask about culture, you can know about the person, but you really truly need to be knowing and understanding about the role. What are their expectations for you coming into that role? Because if you're not asking those questions, you're going to get sucked up into the excitement. Like I'm telling, I can do it as a visionary and not even realizing that I'm getting people super excited about what I'm talking about. It just comes so naturally for most of us that we galvanize people all day. We inspire them. We get them really like enthusiastic about what we're doing. They don't get caught up in that so much. Make sure you're also going back to some of the factual things. Like not only are you a culture fit, not only are you like a visionary integrator, great dynamic duo, but are you the right person for this particular integrator role? Is this the right role for you as an integrator? It happened to me, right? I was so excited about what this visionary was doing. I was like, yes, I have to be part of this. But I failed to ask the right questions about what type of role, what type of integrator they were looking for. Because if I would have realized, oh, wait a minute, like this is as excited as I am and how much I'm going to support you like crazy outside of the organization. I'm not the right person to sit in the PPM role of getting people process and metrics in place, to make that happen. I'm on the other side. Once you've gotten past all of that, I'm the great person to really like truly like strategically think about things with you, and let's really like bounce ideas off of each other. Let's really like let's take things to the next level. That's where I thrive.
And it is so true. And I've got a similar story. One of the first roles I took as COO, I didn't ask enough questions. It was exciting. It was where I thought I wanted to be. But the questions I should have been asking, I did not ask. And so as the role moved on in time, it's like, oh, this is not, both of us are great. We are not great together. This is
Exactly.
not going to take where we want to go for either of us. And so then the other piece, the other side of it is, don't, COOs, roles, all sorts of people, they think sometimes that they're stuck. Well, I've taken this thing, I don't really find it was a mistake, but now I can't get out of it. We're never stuck. There's always the next piece. Keep looking, keep doing it, keep asking the right questions, learn and iterate on your own process as you go into those meetings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everything is a learning process. And so, you know, I love to say there are no mistakes, right? It's a learning opportunity. I learned something from this. I grew from it. And now I know what questions to ask next time. And I see a lot of my clients, they get frustrated because they're like, man, I should have known to ask that question. And my thing is this, as a person, remember, you can't make decisions today based off of what you know now for the things that you didn't know a year or two ago, right?
Correct.
You just can't. It's like, oh, well, I wish I would have known and realized all of these things because I would have asked different questions. Okay, but now you know those questions today. And next time you're interviewing or next time you're in this particular situation, you know to ask these different questions. So everything is a learning opportunity. And just be really careful, because I've seen a couple of people spiral down when they're like, I should have asked these questions. I should have known better. I should listen, stop shooting yourself. Stop shitting
They should all
yourself.
day long. I know.
You can shit yourself all day long. So, I mean, you just have to know and understand that what you knew and the decisions that you made yesterday could be very different because you have different information today. And that's okay. That's
It
okay.
is. Give yourself the grace and the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Kristie, this was fantastic. I know you and I could talk for hours about all of this stuff. As
Yeah.
we wrap up, though, I do want to give you a moment to talk a little bit more about what you're doing and how people can reach out. And I know in the description below we'll have some information to get people in contact as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. So HerVerse is something that's very, very exciting. We're super excited. We have Female Executive MastHERmind, where we are working with second in command leaders. So regardless of what operating system you're running on, EOS integrators, Pinnacle, you're more in that second in command role, system and soul, the operators. And listen, there's a plethora of other operating systems that are out there now. So our description is, if you are working with a visionary to execute the vision while running the day-to-day business, if that is you, then this is a community of women who are coming together to truly help each other. We're making connections so that you can grow and develop as an integrator or second in command leader, but you can also really truly propel your company forward to the next level. We have all different kinds of ways to get involved, from just a virtual community that we've built out, an app that is specific for us, all the way to some an annual summit that we do. It's coming up in November 6th, 7th, and 8th. I'm super excited. We're going to be in a warm climate this year. We're going to be in Phoenix, Arizona. We've been in a couple of cold places in the past, so to be in Phoenix where it's warm is going to be really, really nice. This is our 7th summit that we're doing, and if you know me, 7 is my favorite and lucky number. So there's all kinds of fun things that are happening. In fact, there may be 7 fun things that are happening at Summit to celebrate our seventh summit. The second community that we have is it's called the LeadHER community, and it is for women who report to that second in command role. So your senior executive leadership team, regardless of whether they have direct reports or not, if they are running a department, they qualify to be part of this organization. It is brand new. We just launched it on Friday, so we're beyond excited about it. And there's lots of opportunities that are coming and will be available very soon for it. But definitely want to encourage, like, if you're looking for a group of sales women or, a group of operations people, you really want to connect with your peers, this is going to be an amazing community for you as well. And then last but not least is my coaching. So we do one-on-one coaching for both second in command leaders and for the leadership team members. And you can connect all three of these organizations. You can connect at HerVerse.com. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Kristie Clayton. And you can reach out to me anytime to be a resource or, to ask a question or to get engaged in any of the communities. We would absolutely love to have you.
Oh, thank you, Kristie. I know you come every once in a while and you speak to my community as well. So I really do appreciate your time and your effort. Thank you very much. If you want any additional information, we're going to put it in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care.